mythology of professional wrestling could ever be complete without the copious mention of WrestleMania 3, in particular its most defining image. WWF champion Hulk Hogan overturning the 500-pound Andre the Giant before a reported 93,000 fans at the Pontiac Silverdome en route to defeating a man that had been unbeaten for 15 years. It was a moment that was as real as it was fabled. Professional wrestling has long relied on myth-making to enhance its stories, and, shocker, that Hogan body slam of Andre benefited from a bit of selective storytelling. In short, there may not have actually been 93,000 fans there, Andre actually wasn't undefeated all those years, and the awe toward Hogan's mighty slam of Andre may have been a wee bit misplaced, because Andre had been slammed before. Lots of times, in fact. Additionally, Hogan himself had slammed Andre about half a dozen times before 1987 as well, in the WWF no less. For this video, we're going to look at the other wrestling superstars that have body slammed Andre the Giant. Although the list reportedly numbers beyond 10, we're only going with those slams for which there is corroborating media. So if you were of the mind that Andre's slams were relegated only to the hands of Hulk, prepare to have your mind blown. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and these are 10 other wrestlers who slammed Andre the Giant. Join us. Number 10. Strong Kobayashi. The earliest known Andre slam of any renown took place in May of 1972, shortly before Andre's 26th birthday. The man in question behind the slam was Strong Kobayashi, which is an appropriate name. A bodybuilder by trade, the former two-time IWE World Champion may not have been as technically sound as many of his contemporaries, but he still carved out a niche in wrestling for several decades. And, because he's in this video, you know he slammed Andre the Giant. It was the World Series 1972 finals in Morioka, Japan that pitted Kobayashi against Andre, known then as Monster Rousimov, which Kobayashi would win with 2-1 in a match that lasted for over 37 minutes. And yes, at one stage in that lengthy battle, the rather strong seized the Giant and deposited him with ease. In fact, contrary to the later slams on a physically deteriorating Andre, there's a solid second and a half where Kobayashi has Andre upside down in something akin to a tandem pose before throwing him to the mat. Truly an amazing sight. Number 9. Butcher Vachon. Butcher gives up a bit in fame and notoriety to his brother Maurice, known throughout the world as the unpredictable Mad Dog Vachon. Mad Dog may have had a few more wild stories to his name, like the time he nearly jumped out of an airplane, but Butcher can claim one of the earliest slams of Andre. Just months after Kobayashi's feat of strength, Butcher teamed up with Larry the Axe Hennig in a handicap match against Andre at an AWA event on Chicago's Soldier Field. The funny thing was, the body slam was the result of a wager between Vachon and Hennig. Before the match, Vachon bet his partner that he could slam Andre, and Hennig took that bet. Once inside the ring, Vachon, speaking covertly in French to Andre, said, "I just bet Larry that I could body slam you." A smiling Andre played along with Vachon and went up as light as possible for the Butcher's throw. In the video, the mighty Andre is seen immediately getting up after the slam, not even registering it, and responding with one in kind to Butcher. Hopefully, Butcher bought something nice with his winnings. Number 8. Harley Race. Mutual friend and manager Bobby the Brain Heenan has said that there were only two men that Andre feared, Haku and Harley Race. Man, when you think about it, Heenan has managed some of the toughest dudes on the planet, hasn't he? So you have to figure that if a man of Race's stature and credentials tells Andre, "I'm gonna body slam you tonight," there's a somewhat diminished chance that Andre is going to resist. Race is also one of the few people that can say he slammed Andre more than once. The first known instance took place in October of 1978, and best research indicates that the only evidence is a magazine photograph depicting Andre mid-turn within Race's grasp. The second slam occurred in Houston in January of 1979 and has the added hazard of taking place on the concrete floor. After Race jams a steel chair into the lower abdomen of the Giant, he hoists Andre up and completes the move on the bare floor. It might not have been the prettiest slam, but others will tell you that it was the greatest slam on God's green earth. Number 7. Stan Hansen. For those of you who have never seen Stan Hansen wrestle Andre the Giant, you do not know what in the hell you're missing. A still mostly mobile Andre clashing with a rambunctious brute like Hansen resides somewhere in the holy pantheon of Hoss battles, as their wars in New Japan in 1981 indicate. It was one night in Tokyo that September, as part of the promotion's Bloody Fight series, which is a tour name that absolutely needs to come back by the way, that Hansen joined the exclusive Slam Andre Club. Andre sends Hansen into the ropes, and when he ducks the head, he gets kicked in the face by the ornery Texan. With Andre stunned, Hansen walks up and slams Andre the way he would a man a third of his size, sending the usually stoic crowd into a wild applause. Hansen might well have taken a bow had he not fallen against the ropes on the recoil. While the slam was indeed impressive, it's merely a small taste of the goodness that Andre vs. Hansen gave the wrestling world, and if you're unfamiliar with their shared work, personal research is recommended. Number 6. Kamala. Shortly after the recent passing of James Harris, all sorts of memories and appreciative stories emerged about the unique career of the character known as the Ugandan Giant, in particular the video of what this entry entails. In the early part of 1983, Kamala feuded with Andre across several territories, including Bill Watts' Mid-South promotion and Paul Bosch's Houston territory, the two of which were co-promoting on occasion. Though Kamala as a character had only emerged the previous year, he quickly became a credible foil to the beastly Andre. One night in Shreveport, LA in February of 1983, Kamala demonstrated his raw power to Mid-South fans when in the midst of an out-of-control brawl, Kamala sent the almighty Andre to the canvas with a whopping slam, before exuberantly slapping his belly in celebratory and/or taunting fashion. Kamala and Andre's rivalry went on to encompass several other territories before it finally reached its end, most notably in a steel cage match for the WWF in October of 1984, which was won by Andre. Number 5. Antonio Inoki. If ever a professional wrestler deserved a biopic, it's Enoki, and it would probably feel like a combination of a Cecil B. DeMille epic, Forrest Gump, and an episode of Drunk History in terms of its sheer unbelievability. The man has fought on abandoned islands, kicked Muhammad Ali's legs in a snooze fest, and reportedly bought an island from Fidel Castro because he heard there was treasure buried on it. The fact that he slammed Andre the Giant 3 times in all might not even crack his top 20. The first time was in Kagoshima, Japan in December 1983 during the annual Tag League when Enoki battled fellow icon Andre in your bog-standard singles match. After nailing the Giant with his trademark standing enziguri, Enoki follows up with an impressive scoop slam for a near fall. What makes the slam even more impressive is the fact that the two were so close to the ropes when Andre went up, and Enoki, not exactly a powerlifter, manages to quarter turn his own body while Andre's upside down to make sure that the 500-pounder didn't land on the ropes. I mean, if Andre had landed on the ropes, I'm pretty sure he would have cut through them more violently than Retribution's wobbly chainsaw. Number 4. Elkanik. As part of his usual tours of the globe, Andre made many stops in Mexico's Universal Wrestling Association. In February of 1984, he did battle with promotional star Elkanik, who at the time had held the UWA World title 4 out of an eventual 15 times. It was in a 2 out of 3 falls match that Kanik joined the impressive list of giant slammers, although he did do so with a wee bit of difficulty. Kanik was a heavyweight at around 240 pounds, but he wasn't the bulky powerhouse that a Stan Hansen or a Kamala was by any means. His first attempt at a slam during the match ends awkwardly when he's unable to take Andre up into the 180-degree spin and instead just drops him in something that looks a bit like Wade Barrett's wasteland in the end. The second try goes much better, however. Kanik went on to win the match, but Andre got his revenge the following year, defeating him in Nagasaki for New Japan in under 5 minutes. Number 3. Riki Choshu. The man that popularized the hold we know today as the Sharpshooter faced off with Andre as part of the 1984 IWGP League. Odds were kinda slim that Choshu was going to be able to tie Andre's massive limbs into the necessary grapevine to complete the Sasori Gatame, so other methods were required for Choshu to wear down his looming opponent, like, say, a tectonic plate shifting slam. Like with the Hansen example, it began with a kick to the head of a backdrop telegraphing Andre, followed by the scoop in for the ambitious body slam. But while Hansen's slam was a little cleaner, Choshu looked like he struggled a bit with Andre as he wobbled to the side and collapsed to the mat just as he executed the throw. The move was pretty close to inadvertently becoming a Northern Lights bomb, and it might have even caused Andre to land on his head had Choshu not let go in time. But hey, those are the risks you run when you scoop slam a wrestler that's twice your body weight. Number 2, Otto Vons. Imagine if Jeff Cobb gained about 100 pounds and was Walter's long-lost Austrian brother. That is the mammoth Otto Vons, a 370-pound powerhouse that ripped phone books in half and ruled his home Catch Wrestling Association for many years. Stars at different stages of their careers passed through the CWA, and not surprisingly, Andre came in as a star attraction, his usual scenario. This matched up two very different super heavyweights in the towering Andre and the more compact Vons in the summer of 1986. What made Vons' attempt unique was the follow-up to the move. After nonchalantly slamming Andre to the canvas, Vons immediately reared back and tumbled onto Andre's prone body with an effortless rolling senton. You may remember a Kevin Owens match or two when JBL was on commentary, where Layfield inevitably compared KO's trademark corner rolling senton to that of Vons. And that was the charm of Otto Vons. For a man of his considerable immensity, he had astonishing agility that was equaled by brute strength. And both were displayed here just seconds apart. Number 1, the Ultimate Warrior. As noted at the beginning of this video, none of these other slams were canon when Hogan and Andre gave us the historical slam heard around the world at WrestleMania 3, not even Hulk's prior attempts on the Giant. A highlight reel of all the prior slams would render WrestleMania 3's ending a little less potent, impressive as it still was physically. To WWE's method of storytelling, slamming Andre was a rare act reserved for a headlining Superman. No surprise then that in 1989, with the Ultimate Warrior tabbed as the heir to the Hogan mantle, Warrior's legend continued its construction in a feud with an aging, physically eroding Andre. On more than one occasion, Warrior was booked to slam Andre as a way of establishing the reigning Intercontinental Champion as a theoretical equal to Hogan. These slams are a bit more in line with the story WWE prefers to tell, as they occurred after WrestleMania 3, meaning that Hogan was still the first in accordance with their version of events. But Warrior was far from second on the list. Instead, he is part of an impressive group of world-renowned wrestling stars that can lay claim to having, at least once, picked up the 8th wonder of the world and slammed him to the mat.